I'm back with another interview, this time with lead guitarist and founder of HammerFall, Oscar Dronjak. I completely messed that up. I don't know why I did that. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, good, good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Actually, I'm really, really excited. This HammerFall tour that is going to be happening in Australia next year. Technically, the first time you guys have ever done a full headline tour in the 30-year career of the
Correct.
band. That's got to be
Correct.
exciting.
Yeah, it really is exciting, especially since Australia is one of those countries that you heard so much about, but never really been there. So I'm looking forward to this more than anything next year.
Yeah. Technically, though, I think you and I both know that's not true because you did that one-off show in 2015.
Yeah, yeah, that's why
Yeah.
we use the word technically. But yeah, no, you're right. We did one show in 15. It was in Melbourne, and it was we did Loud Park in Tokyo, and then went down through Taiwan and Hong Kong down to Melbourne, and then back home again. And
Yeah.
that's the only time we ever attempted anything in Australia. So this is it feels like the first time, even though
Was
that
that
was a
just
really good time.
yeah? How did that show come about? Because obviously, like you see a lot of bands, they'll kind of come out and they're like, "Well,
Uh,
we're here. We may as well do a full tour." But obviously, that was just the one-off. Was that just kind of just the timing? You could only fit one show in, so you like may as well make it count, or what happened there?
I think, as far as I remember, the promoter only wanted to do one show to see what, if it worked or not. And it did work. I mean, I don't know if it was sold out, but it was kind of close to. So it was really a lot of people there. It was a really good show. But we also didn't, I don't know who that promoter was or whatever, but we worked with a German booking agency here in Europe for the most part. And they don't really, haven't really had any good connections down in Australia. That's a big part of the reason why we've never gone there throughout the career of Hammerfall. But this now we work with a North American booking agency that does have some connections in Australia. So they are the ones who set this whole thing up for us, and I'm really happy. I mean, like I said, I'm super excited for this. It's like the one last thing that we haven't been really done that we haven't really been doing that I really want to do with Hammerfall.
Oh yeah. And with that tour, oh, sorry, with that show, sorry, was it just kind of in and out? Did you get to do any cool touristy stuff?
I know we had a half a day, I think. I went to the Melbourne Zoo for just to have something to do because it was walking distance, I think, from where we were. But we didn't really have time to experience anything. That's what I'm gonna do this time. This is one tour I'm not going to be staying at the hotel room for the whole tour, which sometimes happens. You just lock yourself in and write music or whatever the hell you do. But I'm gonna experience things this time. That's part of the reason I'm looking forward to it so much. Also because I heard it's going to be very warm. In January, it's height of the summer more or less. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to go from a really cold Sweden to a really warm Australia, but I'll be ready for that too.
Yeah, and if it's any indication, like so, right now it's the end of August. We're technically at the end of winter, and we've had to crack the
Right?
aircon out. So it's getting hot already.
Okay.
So January, I can
All
imagine, is
right.
just going to be a nightmare.
Yeah,
Not
that
to,
is the problem. But yeah, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, not to scare you away or anything, but yeah,
No,
January is going to
no,
be a hot
no.
time.
Yeah, we're ready for it. I don't like air conditioning. I hate it because it's the temperature difference is so big. It's great when you don't have to sweat while just sitting down, but it's also a recipe for getting throat stuff, you know.
Yep,
So
100%. Cool. So, just with the history of the band and stuff, so I personally consider you, I think, one of the most influential people within the Swedish music scene. Your fingerprints are over a lot of bands in that country, which is incredible. It's a lot of bands I love too, like At the Gates, In Flames, Tiamat, all these really cool bands that kind of like all kind of came out of Ceremonial Oath, which is really
well, yeah, well, yeah, I think that's not entirely true. There were bands, the people in Ceremony Oath that went on to other things
yeah,
as well,
yeah,
of course. But like Jesper, for example, with In Flames, and me with Hammerfall. But Tiamat has been around for many years before Anders joined them. After that, so they were a band that were around. I think they released their first album in like '88 or something like that with Tiamat. But I see what
oh, I
your
thought,
point is. Yeah.
yeah, I
No,
thought, I
I
thought,
see what you mean though. We had
yeah.
had some some. It's been a great. But that is just the thing, because we all are about the same age. We play the same type of music, meaning kind of death metal-ish, whatever you want to label it at that point. But it was death metal music with growling vocals. We all, I didn't say not going to say grew up together, but we all came into adulthood together. I would say, like from 16, 17, maybe up until 20 something, you know. And that's when the Gothenburg sound was formed. Really, that's the Gothenburg scene back in the late '80s. That is when, and that's what something we were a big part of developing, or being a part of, just playing with a bunch of other bands, of course. And that is something I'm going to be really proud of for a long time, because that is we helped that scene grow into what it became later.
Oh yeah. So the main question I was going to actually spawn off that is, obviously with that kind of being like the start of the Gothenburg sound. I'm curious, what kind of started your love for metal and your love for, like, you know, rock and roll and heavy music and stuff?
Mm. Um, I wish I could have like a specific date or a specific recording or whatever, you know. But it's, for me, it's more fluid. We did listen to a lot of music in my family. I had an older brother, but he didn't listen to any music back then. Like when I was that young, he started listening to Bruce Springsteen in the mid '80s and stuff. That was his favorite. Well, actually, he might have listened to Bruce in the '70s too, but it was still not a very musical family. We played music instruments, but never listened to all the time. Like some people I know now, their parents played music and they listened to music every day, and we didn't do that really. So for me, I had to learn everything. I had to find everything and learn what I liked and what I didn't like by myself, because I didn't have anybody that could recommend this album to me or whatever. Of course, we had friends, people, in your class and everything, that listened to metal music, and that is how it began for me. Because I bought Screaming for Vengeance and Restless and Wild from a friend of mine, like a vinyl LPs, back in '80, must have been '82, but I can't really remember. I know I bought them from him anyway. And then the next year, Balls to the Wall came out, and like whatever I listened to up until the point when Balls to the Wall came out, there was a bunch of Kiss and everything, of course Kiss as well. But once Balls to the Wall came out, when I heard that song, I felt some sort of connection that this was something very special. So I listened to it. It was a friend of mine, or a friend of my brother's, actually recorded off the radio, had a cassette tape with it, because it was just before the album came out. This was, I think, it was actually a single, I believe, anyway. So that when I got a hold of that tape, I listened to it over and over and over again, because that made a connection with me somehow. So for me, Balls to the Wall is the path into this whole heavy metal genre that I love so much. But I like before this, I realized that metal music was a thing. I just knew there was a band called Judas Priest that had an album called Screaming for Vengeance. I knew there was a band called Accept that had an album called Restless and Wild, but I didn't really put two and two together. I didn't have anybody to explain it to me. So once Balls to the Wall came out, I started to get hooked, and those hooks are still in me, even now, 30, whatever, it's 42 years later. No, 40, yeah, it's not, whatever it is, 40 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, I mean, like Judas Priest being a very early, I guess, influence, that makes a lot of sense considering the music that is made with HammerFall. Except wasn't something I wasn't expecting, but that's really cool to know that album had such a huge influence. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Now,
yeah, you can't talk about HammerFall and the songwriting and everything without talking about Accept. It's been Wolf Hoffman is my favorite guitar player of all time, because the way he writes songs, the way he writes the solos, the way he plays, had a huge influence on me. Of course, the guys from Judas Priest, KK Downing and Glenn Tipton, have had a huge influence as well on me. But if I have to select one person, it has to be Wolf from Accept. Yeah, and he's just, yeah, he shaped a lot of the stuff that I take for granted now when it comes to songwriting and guitar playing.
oh yeah. Now, obviously, we're going to be hitting the 10-year mark of David Wallen joining the band in HammerFall. Obviously, now that's kind of been the core unit has been together for 10 years. How's that been as a songwriting element and a touring element to the success of the band and what you guys have been able to achieve over the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's been a really hard ride, I guess you could say. Without meaning it was difficult. It was easy, but it was also, we did a lot of shows. We did a lot of touring over these last 10 years, and because of with David, when he joined the band, he brought with him I wouldn't say youthful, but a lot of energy that I think everybody in the band had sort of. We were lacking a little bit. It was in there, but we needed something to bring it out. And David was the one who brought that out of everybody. And that is why playing live with HammerFall is such an energizing experience, because of, we sort of focused on that and incorporated that energy into all of our shows. And that has helped with the songwriting too, because now, I mean, I have the drummer, the drumming style of David. I know him now very well. Like you said, 10 years since we started playing together. I know what he's capable of. It's easy to write songs that I know that can fit him, or at least to plan drum things for him that I know he can pull off, because this is his strength. And I gotta say, with the new album, with Avenge the Fallen, the drumming on this album is incredibly energizing. I think everybody felt it when he was recording it. He was, of course, not satisfied with anything. He never is. You know how it is. I hope he can be satisfied with it now. But when he was recording it, it's always like, can we do this better? Can we do that better? We're like, no, stop. It's fucking amazing what you've done right now. You don't need to do anything better, because it's only going to be worse if you try to redo anything. We reached that point, and then when we started recording the guitars and the bass on top of that, we were like, whoa, this is going to be like, this is really cool. You feel that energy and the power from the drums. It's easy to perform to the best of your abilities later on after that. And I know Fredrik Nordström, the producer for this album, he's involved in the drums and the mixing, and then of course setting the sound for the guitars. But he's not really there after the drums and the mixing. In between that, he's not really there day to day. He checks in every once in a while, because we have Pontus, our guitar player. He's a producer in his own right, so he knows how to do that. So we had a really good working relationship, the three of us, Fredrik, Pontus, and I, when we record the guitars and the bass. But Fredrik said to me during that, like when we had recorded for a couple of weeks, he told me like, shit, you guys have really stepped it up this time. Now I feel pressured now, because the mix, I have to deliver a mix that's up to this level as well. I mean, he always does, but he felt the pressure that he needed to get this a couple of notches up as well, which was great. I mean, I think that is part of the reason why this album sounds as powerful as it does, because everybody was on their toes.
Yeah, and having a producer too, being like, "Oh, I have to make sure I'm at my A game to match the
Yeah.
level." Like, that's got to
Yeah.
be a high compliment for sure.
He really is. I mean, I've known Fredrik since the late '80s, so I know him really well. But worked
Yeah,
together
he
on
was
so many recordings. But
Well, he was part of Ceremonial Oath too, wasn't he? Yeah.
That's a funny story in itself. Because we shared a rehearsal room with him. His band was called Snakeskin Cowboys, but he wanted to be like getting into that producer thing. So when we got a record deal with Ceremonial Oath, we contacted him, and he gave us, of course, we had a small amount of money, but he gave us a lot of days for it anyway, because it was his first thing. And he had never heard death metal before. Like, he didn't know what it was really, because his Snakeskin Cowboys is exactly the type of band you would think it is by the name of the band. It was hard rock, sleazy kind of thing. But so I remember him telling me that like I said, we shared a rehearsal room, and he came in. So we had this, you had Tuesdays at between 6 and 8. That's where your slot. And then somebody else came from 8 to 10, whatever, how it works. So Fredrik's band had a slot after us. And we were in the rehearsal room rehearsing, and I was singing and, doing all the growling and stuff. And Fredrik said, "What the fuck is this? I have never heard anything like this." So he peeked in, like, "What the hell are these guys doing?" They were laughing at us, of course. Thinking, "Well, what the fuck is going on in here?" And then they closed the door. And then we once we recorded the album, the Ceremonial Oath album was actually his first death metal recording ever. That was the start of the Gothenburg sound for him. I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. We had no idea what we were doing, but we made it work together anyway. And it was a really important time. That's my first album too, my very first album. So it has a very special meaning for me as well, that part. But with Fredrik Nordström, then of course he was, after that he did In Flames, he did At the Gates, he did Dark Tranquility, he did all these other bands that sort of shaped the Gothenburg sound. And what all of them have in common is Fredrik Nordström, of course. So he's a huge, important part of that.
Yeah, I was going to mention his name, but I did left it out on purpose. But I think the two of you are probably two of the most influential people across the sound. So, yeah, you guys have shaped an entire scene, which is incredible.
Well, you don't forget Jesper Strömblad either. He's
he holds a special.
If you're talking about this, like, yeah, you need to mention him too.
He holds a special place in my heart with In Flames and all the work he's done as well. Like, he's incredible. So, cool. Now, obviously, with the live tour coming up and stuff, you've got 13 records of material to pull from. With this being the debut tour, how are you going to be looking at, like, kind of going through what you've made and like deciding on what you're going to play in Australia for the first time? Or is it going to be something where it's, hey, it's the new album, let's get the new album out, let's get the hits out, kind of, like, what's the structure there?
Well, the thing is, this is a constant battle. Every time we release a new album, there's 10 more songs that needs to be taken into consideration for a set list. That the set list doesn't grow, and if anything, it shrinks, it feels like. But so I used to always say this: we need to have the classics, we need to have the new album, and we need to have some fun stuff. That's some fun, maybe not the most expected songs, but something that makes us. I mean, we've been doing this for so many years. We can't just go through the motions anymore. It's supposed to be fun, It's supposed to be a big thing for us too. And just playing Hearts on Fire every night is great, because everybody needs to hear that. People want to hear it. But for me, it's everything else also is important. There needs to be a mix of stuff that makes the set list feel not rehashed but fresh, even though we do play several of the songs every time. I mean, I guess a third about them are the same songs we play every time, and then we flesh the rest out with whatever we're doing at the moment.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things where you got to kind of wonder, how many times does Metallica have to play Enter Sandman before they get sick of it?
Yeah, I mean, they do have to play it, but I think they did a great thing that they did 2 shows back to back now, a unique set list, so they don't have to play the same songs every night. I mean, it takes a lot of planning, a lot of rehearsing, but it's a pretty cool thing. Another thing that's really cool is what Manowar is doing. I think later this year it's later this year in Germany, at least, maybe in Europe, maybe some other places, but they do was it Hail to England and Sign of the Hammer. I think those are the 2 ones. They play, so they do 2 shows. I mean, every other show they play one of the albums in its entirety, and then the rest, like whatever, they fill out the rest with classics or stuff. And then the first day they play Hail to England, the second day they play Sign of the Hammer, and then they fill out with the classics as well. I think that's unbelievably cool. I mean, as a Manowar fan, I would love to see. I mean, you go to both those shows, right? Because you get to see both full albums. It's an incredible thing. So yeah, that's a cool idea. I mean, HammerFall is not there yet. I don't think we have that. We could do something like that, but we always shied away from it because for us, it's a matter of the next album all the time. We still feel like we have something to contribute to the legacy of HammerFall. We're not done yet, is what I'm trying to say. We still have a lot of songs, a lot of music to come out that will have its place in the HammerFall pantheon, so to speak. But we do get requests. So can you play this album in its entirety in this show? Well, no, fuck. I mean, we play maybe 1 song from that album. We're not going to rehearse 10 songs just for this one show. Plus, we're not a nostalgia act right yet. I mean, we'll get there, as any band does. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Manowar or Maiden doing this, doing it. It's great for the fans. It's fantastic for the fans. But we still have so much more to offer in terms of being relevant in with the new albums. But I don't want to fall into that trap, because if you do it once, it's really hard to get out of it, I think. So we're gonna save that for when we need it later on, because right now we feel very strong, very vital, and very energized anyway, as it is.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of leads into my next question. So obviously, with the 13th album now being Avenge the Fallen, I think this is probably your most accessible record of your entire discography. I think I could show this to anyone, and anyone would be like, "Oh, cool, I get it." Like, where some of maybe the other albums are a bit, maybe a little harder to kind of sell people on initially. Was that
Uh-huh.
kind of something you guys looked at going in? It was trying to make like a record for everyone, or was this just the natural sound that came out?
Natural. I mean, I don't think we always try to make the best album that we possibly can at that point in time. That's been the same for every album that we released. That we could not have done this any better, I don't think. We could have improved on things now, sure, but that's pointless in looking back at like that, because we didn't have that experience then. But so with Avenged Fallen, I think it's great. What I love about this album is that a lot of people seem to have different favorite songs. um like I know which I think the singles are the most important ones, the ones that we think are the best, basically. But um I hear a lot of talk about other songs. Almost all of the other songs have been mentioned in this, all of them have been mentioned in this respect, which is great. I mean, that is the key to a really strong album. It's not just one or two songs, but 10 songs that have that same innate power inside. But also an album that doesn't go from here and then stays up here, but in terms of dynamics, I want it to be like this: ebb and flow, come and go. Not everything is just the same all the time. It's 10 songs that together create a dynamic and flowing album. That is what we try to do every time, and that is what we have tried to do this time. Not an accessible album, but an album that we think is the best that we possibly can make at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think that's true, 100%. Like this album just rules. It's so good. Love it.
Yeah, thank you. Very happy to hear
Um,
that.
Now, not only was this record, I guess, like one of the best, but this is the big return to Nuclear Blast after being with Napalm for a while. How was
Yes.
the homecoming? Because, when you think of, I guess, like HammerFall, you think of Nuclear Blast as a record label. So going away for a while and then coming back, like, what was the homecoming like?
Mm. Oh, I mean, the thing is, when we released Hammer of Dawn, we were talking to, because that was the last album on Napalm, right? With that deal. And we did talk to Napalm about a new contract, of course. We talked to several different labels, but none of them made us feel as wanted as Nuclear Blast did. They made us feel like we really want you guys. And the thing is, we released Revolution in 14, and then we went to Napalm after that, but we still released those anniversary editions of Glory to the Brave, of Legacy of Kings, Renegade, and Crimson Thunder. So we still had a good working relationship with Nuclear Blast. We knew the people. Well, not some people quit and whatever, but because the Nuclear Blast that we left in 14 and the one that we came back to for this album, this is two different companies in a lot of ways, because they were before they were all owned by Markus Steiger, who started this label when he was maybe a teenager or younger, at least, in his basically basement, and then he grew and grew and grew. So he sold his shares to a company called Believe, which is, I believe, a streaming company from the Netherlands or something like that. But my point is, the company that we came back to is a much more structured and organized company that I think has more. Nuclear Blast before was more old school. This is more up to date with the technology that works that is necessary today, in terms of like social media and stuff and streaming and shit, because that is a big part of everything, unfortunately. So when we got all the offers to come back to whatever label we were going to sign with, there was really no question that Nuclear Blast, they did everything they could to make sure that we knew that they wanted us back. And that is the great feeling, that it did feel like coming home in a lot of ways, because we've been with them for 17 years before that. So it was a very nice feeling.
Yeah, and I don't think you could have come back to Nuclear Blast with a better record. So, yeah, again, absolutely adore the record. In saying that, though, we'll wrap everything up. So the debut headline tour for HammerFall hits Australia on all major capital cities in January of 2025. Check out Avenge the Fallen on all streamers, or even pick up a pick up a physical copy. Thank you
Yeah,
so much,
yeah.
Oscar, for your time. I appreciate you taking time out to chat.
No problem at all. It was my pleasure. Have a really nice evening and take care of yourself. All right.